Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is another podcast coming to you from Benchmark Studios. As you all have come to know and expect, we tell stories here. Today's going to feel a little different, more like a PSA. I'm speaking to my guest on Thursday, October 30th. In a couple days, assuming nothing happens at a federal level, SNAP benefits are going to stop. That would be this Saturday. So we wanted to take some time to sort of paint a broad picture of what's happening in Lancaster County for food and where people can find resources even beyond this crisis going forward. So Julie, thank you so much for being here today. Julie works for CAP. And Julie, can you just kind of give us a brief overview of your role at CAP and what you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Julie Rhoads. I'm the Vice President of Health and Nutrition at CAP, Community Action Partnership of Lancaster. So we have lots of programming, holistic programming for families, but my area is really focused on health and nutrition. So thinking about programs such as WIC, which is Women, Infant, and Children. We have a nutrition education program. We are the food distribution provider for 40 pantries across the county, and we also have some senior centers that we support. So a lot of different kind of work in the community.
Wow. Yeah, that is from WIC to food. So for those 40 centers, do you like hold the food and then deliver it to them?
Yep. So we have two programs that we administer through CAP, and so one of them is a state food program, and one is a federal food program, in which we receive food and then redistribute it to those pantries.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on food, like I mentioned, we want to really dig into SNAP here. From what I read, 2 million Pennsylvanians receive SNAP benefits. Are you able to kind of zoom in on Lancaster and paint the picture of what it looks like to need SNAP and receive SNAP here in Lancaster?
Yeah, so Lancaster is interesting because we do have we have lots of folks that are on SNAP. About 40% of SNAP participants are children, so nationwide. So if you think about the population, lots of, from seniors to young families, all across the board, people who are enrolled in the SNAP program and receiving those benefits. And for families, that really supports their economic profile. So that is money they've received from SNAP that they don't then have to use for medical bills or rent. So that alleviates the need to go hungry, because, of course, food is the most flexible thing in our budget. We all know this, right? We all go to the grocery store and see higher prices. So SNAP really alleviates that concern of the basic need of food for families, so they don't have to make those sort of choices. So, we have lots of people on SNAP in Lancaster. We also have some people who are eligible for SNAP who are not on the program. And, Lancaster, we have some folks who have some mistrust of government programs and supports. So we were actually working, prior to sort of the situation we're in now, to increase the level of SNAP participation in the county. We have folks who are coming to food pantries, and they are eligible for SNAP, and they're not on the program. So we would really love for them to get on the program. So about 50% of people who come to food pantries are not on SNAP, and essentially 85% of those people would be eligible. So we'd really like to do that, because, of course, SNAP allows you access to purchase the foods that are best for your family, and really make those decisions based on what's best for you, instead of a food pantry, which you might get a box of food, and half of that might be something that you can use.
Right. Without SNAP, more people will be hungry. How does being hungry affect the rest of your life? Like I said, I know that's a big question.
Yeah, it's a big question. Like I said, there's a lot of economic trade-offs that families are making. So choosing between rent, medical bills, things like that. And we know that we also, we did hunger mapping, which was a data study here in Lancaster. We also found that families, a lot of times parents will, of course, let their kids eat first and forego food. Or eat off their plate, those kinds of things, eat after the kids have finished. but still kids are also going hungry, even though that parents are trying to make those choices. So that, that's generational. So that parent is going to work hungry, not performing well. That child is also going to school, not performing well. There's tired, lethargic, maybe behavior issues. So those all have effects on our community. And then not to mention the kind of long-term diet impacts on our health. So really diet is the cornerstone of health. We know that there's a lot of association with food insecurity and things like diabetes and other, long-term health effects that really impact our whole community.
Sure. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think that's something everybody can get on board with, no matter where you stand politically or socially or economically. Everyone can agree that nutrition is kind of the cornerstone of our individual lives, but also our society. As people grow and develop together, we build those bonds of trust and everything else that our society rests on. Having said that, what are some resources people can go to and find out where to get food?
Yeah, so I think it's important to know that the SNAP program, like you said, it's very large. It supports lots of people. And the economic impact of that in Pennsylvania and in Lancaster is very large. So for every meal that SNAP provides, every meal that the food bank provides, SNAP provides 9 because of how the size and scope of the program. So
if 50% of people who are going to food banks are eligible for SNAP but not receiving it, and SNAP provides 9 meals for every one that a food bank. That's I don't do math very well, but there seems like there's a disconnect there.
Yeah, there's a disconnect, and we'd really love to see people get on SNAP because it really, that money is invested back into our local community, into farmers, into retailers, small businesses. So instead of building up systems like food banks, which are very important and essential to our community, but we'd love to see as many people on SNAP as possible. But given kind of our current situation with SNAP, we are encouraging people to seek out resources like food banks, although we are seeing a real strain on the food bank system at the moment. The system we have is state and federally supported as well.
Sure.
So I think food banks are experiencing a lot of strain and trying to, because again, their system is much smaller than the SNAP system. So I would encourage folks to, if you're reaching out to a food bank, call first, make sure that, you don't need an appointment or, that you understand their requirements. And we're really encouraging food banks to, look at their requirements, think about how they can be low barrier for people so that people can show up and get quick access to that food. But they're having a real strain. They're not built to withstand this sort of impact. So we know that there's lots of creative things happening in our community, and we're glad that is happening, even though we feel like it shouldn't be needed. We feel like people should look out for each other and are looking for ways to support their neighbors. Mutual aid situations are kind of popping up.
So Julie, with SNAP requirements, I know sometimes they change. It's a federal system, so everything happens
right.
inefficiently and slowly. But there are some new requirements. Can you tell us about them?
Yeah, so some new requirements happened earlier this year with the Big Beautiful Bill. So increased work requirements for folks. So some of those went into place in September and then November 1st.
Okay.
More requirements go into play in terms of work requirements. So folks are required. There's many exceptions. Biggest one, if you have dependents under the age of 17, but lots of kind of exceptions. But on the whole, for a large majority of people, there is a requirement that a 20-hour a week, a requirement of work, education, or volunteering. So we know that that's going to be an extra kind of component for people to navigate. Sure. Why we also know that most people are already working, but in terms of having to navigate that system, it's an additional barrier in terms of verifying that you're working, submitting that paperwork, having someone process that paperwork. So we are trying to educate people about those work requirements, try to think about creative ways. If they're not working, how can they verify their, get volunteer hours or verify their education to do that so that they continue to receive SNAP benefits. And it's an interesting time because at the same time, sort of, SNAP will be frozen, and then these work requirements are going into place. So we think a lot of people might fall through the cracks. So you're still required to do the SNAP work requirements, even though you're not receiving sort of temporary benefits. So people will still be on like active SNAP status, but we're concerned that that message isn't getting out to people.
Call first before going to a food bank. You said you provide food for 40 of them across the county. Are there any areas that are maybe lacking, like they don't have a food bank, they don't have anything else? Where are those areas, and where would be the nearest access point for people?
Yeah, so we're lucky in Lancaster that we have lots of generosity in terms of food banks and churches and places that are kind of supporting. And 211 is a great resource, to kind of navigate, what's in your neighborhood and what's in your area. We did do a hunger mapping study, as I mentioned before, with Hunger Free Lancaster and the Central PA Food Bank. And so we, mapped out where are all the food banks, who are they serving, what are their requirements. You mentioned ID, which is not typically a requirement. So that's important for people. It may be for some food banks, but not typically a requirement. So our hope is that it's really lowest barrier, right? We want to get food to people. So the easiest way that we can do that, and the less requirements we can have. So we're encouraging, food pantries, look at your requirements. Can you make it easier for folks to access those things? Also, we know that things like hours of operation are challenging. You're talking about SNAP is a large percentage of people who are working. So how can they access things that are typically open during the day? And how can we make hours more accommodating for people, or other kind of creative solutions to that problem?
Yeah, sure. So 211, you mentioned.
Yeah.
They have a website. It's also the actual phone number, just like 911. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about that resource?
Yeah, our 211 with United Way is great, and we contribute lots of information as other service providers do. And our 211 has also been calling food banks and saying, we know this is a hard time. Are you still accepting people? Can we still? So they're keeping kind of close eye on who they can direct people to, and what are the best resources to do that. So would encourage people, if they, that is probably the best and easiest way to navigate, call or visit their website and see kind of real data, because we are all kind of inputting data in real time and encouraging food banks to do that. And lots of people are connected to lots of, food banks in their area, which is great as well. But if you truly don't know kind of where to start, that's a great resource.
Sure. Okay. And I imagine too, it's easier to go to a familiar place that you trust to get food. For instance, we supply food to our students here at Benchmark. We have a full kitchen, and usually they can work out, get some food, get a meal. We have volunteers cook, and a lot of kids, I think, have come to expect that. We serve roughly 90 to 100 students per week here at Benchmark. The majority of them are under the age of 18. They can get a meal while they're here, but we are not a food bank to take food home with you for the rest of the week. What would you tell, let's say, a 17-year-old who goes to school? They can get food at school, obviously, but then they don't feel like they can have food outside of that. Maybe they feel guilty about taking food from their parents who are working, or one way or another, they feel like they have to get the food. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think I would tell them, certainly 211 is a great resource. As I mentioned, I love the idea of other partners that are, not traditionally in the food space, sort of stepping up and thinking about, how they can incorporate into their programming. We're seeing a lot of that too, and hoping people can do that, like connect where they are. Power Packs is a great resource. If those families are in schools and enrolled with a school that's connected to Power Packs, is a great resource. 211, there's also a SNAP helpline. So Central PA Food Bank operates a SNAP helpline, because when you kind of fall into some of these categories that are not their traditional eligibility, it can be tricky to navigate, to figure out, am I eligible for something or am I not? Is it worth it to do the application? It is quite onerous, right? It's a government program, so it's not easy. So that helpline can help people kind of, one, are you eligible and would it be worth it to kind of apply? And then how do you kind of get the paperwork and figure out how to kind of navigate that system? So that's a great resource that I would encourage folks to investigate.
Sure. What about if you are a kid who isn't in school?
Yeah.
I understand you could still be eligible for SNAP. Can you go to a food bank as a 16-year-old by yourself? Can you just call the number listed on our state website and start the application process for SNAP? Where would you go to kind of get those answers?
Yeah, I think you can certainly, I can't speak on all the pantries in there, but I think I would encourage that person to reach out. Really, our stance is we don't want to turn anyone away from food. So, we'd like to, do what we can to work with anyone. And different food pantries have different, funding sources and what they can allow based on if they're, government funded. There's some regulations and some are privately funded, and we can direct people that don't fit that criteria to kind of some other pantry options. So I would encourage them to sort of reach out, again, either directly to that pantry or to navigate through 211. We also have a great community meals network in Lancaster, so comprised of organizations and churches that also provide hot meals. So, we, Hunger Free Lancaster, in its first iteration was really focused on on community meals and making sure that any person could get 3 hot meals a day in Lancaster.
Okay.
Not to say that's right in their neighborhood, but because transportation's an issue. But there's great resources now that we can point people to that have community meals, kind of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So Anchor Breakfast is a big one downtown, and then there's lots of lunches and dinners happening kind of throughout the county. So a great we've coordinated that so that people really can get what they need for hot meals. Because sometimes, preparing a meal and, if you get a box from a food bank, if you don't have a kitchen or if you don't have the resources to do that or the time, a community meal can be a great, avenue for folks.
Okay. And does Hunger Free Lancaster have their own standalone website?
Yes, we don't have a standalone website, so we're not a 501c3. We're kind of a coalition of members.
Okay.
But we do have a page on CAP's website, and Parish Resource Center also collects a listing of all the community meals, which is connected to our website as well.
Okay. So Parish Resource Center, do you know if it's a .com or .org?
I don't know offhand.
Okay. And then is it caplancaster.org?
Yes, caplank.org is our website.
So caplanc.org.
Correct.
Lots of information there.
Yeah.
Perfect. It sounds like this could be really overwhelming for somebody to piece it all together. I can get a hot meal here. I can get a box of food there. Just for anyone watching, I think it might be helpful for you to tackle some assumptions. Are people on SNAP lazy?
No. We know from our hunger mapping that people typically on SNAP are either working, and lots of those are low-wage jobs or irregular hours, or they're on Medicaid, Medicare programs, or disabled. So they're either working or they can't work, and so it's not that they're lazy. And as we mentioned, navigating these systems of food banks and SNAP programs is hard. That is not easy to do. So it requires a lot of work to sort of navigate all of those systems. And people are making those decisions kind of in real time while they have families and other, responsibilities in a life. So certainly not, I know that's perception, but certainly not the reality.
Right. Are there any other negative perceptions outside of that one that you would like to dispel around people who are hungry and using services?
Yeah, I think we also hear people are maybe abusing or coming to food pantries and they don't really need it. We hear people, pantry volunteers might say, well, they showed up in a fancy car and do they really need food? And I'm like, well, can they eat their car? I don't know that that's really like, I think, and like right now we're seeing a lot of people, furloughed government workers who are showing up to us for the first time. Or for whatever the situation is, they could be getting a ride there. You have you're kind of using that to feed a narrative, and you don't actually know. And so we are just, encourage people to assume positive intent, right? If they're showing up to a food pantry, which is usually, can be a shameful experience. We hope it's not. But we hope that we can do that with as much care and not judge people for that experience, because food is a basic human right. And we hope that, that people can do that and kind of however they need to, and they don't need to be shamed for that. They don't need to be shamed for feeding their kids or feeding their family. That shouldn't be a shameful experience.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Thank you for taking a moment to address that. Anything else in this conversation that we haven't hit on that you think is important?
I think I would just encourage people to, those of us who have means or can, to think about how we can contribute to the food bank network, our neighbors, in any way that we can. Whether that's dollars, it's good, better, best. It's like, dollars. Can you volunteer? Can you host a food drive? What are the things that you can do that's within your control to kind of support our neighbors and our community?
If someone is looking to do one of those things, where should they go?
Yeah, so if they're looking to do one of those things, they can obviously Community Action Partnership, CAP will help get them connected, but they also can reach out to their local food bank or food partner.
I know a lot of people are scared right now, even outside of SNAP shutting down. Is there anything that you kind of hold on to that keeps you showing up to work every day and trying to move the ball forward?
I think living in Lancaster, I think I have a lot of hope that we're a generous community here. And interestingly, in Lancaster, we are an abundant place of food, right? We've got all these farms.
Yes.
We've got, this rich culture here. And we haven't quite figured out how to, I am amazed that in Lancaster people go hungry, right? Because we are surrounded by such abundance. But I think I am hopeful that we can sort of, how we can marry those things of being a culture of abundance and rich agricultural, background, and really meet the need of our local community. And we could be on the forefront of that. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. That's an exciting thought.
Yeah.
One last question. We are at Benchmark.
Yeah.
We use fitness as a way to connect with kids. Do you do anything in the way of weightlifting or any kind of fitness for your body? And if so, what's your favorite thing to do?
Okay, so I am a Peloton girly. Okay. I am very into my Peloton, and I still play field hockey in an adult league. Even though I broke my hand last year, which
oh my gosh.
You would think I would hang it up, but I did not, and so I still play field hockey at least once a week with a team that I love. So staying active is important to me. Yeah, for sure.
You just out clubbing people on the field? Is that?
No, but it work? It's not like it is competitive. So yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, good
it's
for
a good
you.
Time. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for your time this morning. We'll definitely push this out and hopefully it helps some people.
Great. Sounds good.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.